Let's get some music playing. I like doing Persona music during this stuff. It's good jams. It's nice, good jams too. That and Final Fantasy music are both really good jams to listen to while doing reviews. Oh, good. It's already got the right window. Cool. Okay, so we're going to do a full-on review of Star Ocean 3 now. The way this works is... You know what? Hold on. Let me... I just want to make sure there's no, like... post-game save kind of thing. Like, hey... Okay, this is a screen you can't exit from. There's nothing. Alright. Okay, so... Star Ocean for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or originally the Super Famicom, when it never actually came out on the SNES. But you know, that's like, it's the same platform. It's the same platform. It's just Japanese versus US. Anyway, so we just the ending of that game was just like a big like. You know, the way we rate games is 5 is average. Okay, 5 is average. We're comparing things to one another. We're collecting data. 5 is the average. You know, if you were to just okay, trust me. If you don't understand why, read a book. You know, seriously, go to school. Like. Seriously, if you don't understand that, why when you rate games 5 should be average, then you got brain issues and you work out, okay? So just 5 is average. If I think a game is okay, its average is gonna get a 5. Don't cry because your favorite game gets a 5, all right? It's fine. 6 is okay. 7 is pretty good. 8's fantastic. 9's amazing. 10 is freaking godlike. Going to school is why we think 7 is average? A little bit, yeah, because C average, you know, and that's a 70%. But yeah, my streamer angry at me. How dare you! Anyway, the way we rate things is kind of all-inclusive in a way. So visuals aren't just like, wow, they have really good sprite work. It's more than just the sprite work. It's in combat, it's the animations, it's like the detail, like everything. Dungeon design, it's all part of the visuals. Everything that we see with our eyes that gives us good feels or bad feels, that's visuals. Same with audio. It's not just the OST, it's the soundtrack, it's the versatility, it's how well it meshes with the game itself, how much you'd be able to listen to the audio tracks outside of the game as well, all that kind of stuff. So, audio. Gameplay, even just walking around the world map or having to backtrack is part of gameplay, because that's how you play the game, is advancing through it. And if you're having to backtrack a lot, Star Ocean, you know? Story, same deal. It's not just the main story, it's the side content, it's how it all works together, how it's pieced together, how it's presented to the player, all the story stuff. Craftsmanship is more of like how well constructed the game is. Is it cohesive? Is it follow a logical path? Is it buggy? Is it you know, impressive? Too much? Or sorry, all that stuff coming together. 9, 10, 10, 9, 10. Thanks, Doc. Yeah, this isn't Suikoden, okay? Jeez, gosh. Yeah, I got a lot of flack when I rated Suikoden as like a... what did I rate Suikoden to? Out of curiosity. Suikoden 2, 8 visuals, 5 audio, 6 gameplay, 5 story, 6 craftsmanship, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, 8. But yeah, I think these are really, really fair scores for Suikoden 2. And people got really mad when I didn't give it like 10s across the board. But the story was definitely nothing special. And the game was pretty well made. And the gameplay was okay. And the audio tracks were pretty okay too. It was good. But visuals were really where it was impressive. The game was okay. It was an okay game. But yeah, people got really mad when I didn't rate it perfectly. Anyway, enjoyment is kind of like my own personal, like subjective score. Everything else is as objective as I possibly can be. I try to be honest. The main mentality I have when I consider all these other 5 scores is how much would I be willing to recommend this game to other people? Okay, so like I think how much would other people that are not me think about this game? For instance, when I told Finn that he, or not Finn, but Yagamoth, when I said he should play Battletoads, it's because I don't think Battletoads is a good or a bad game. It's because I think it's enjoyable to a certain type of people, and I would recommend it to anybody. I would recommend everybody play Battletoads, but mostly I would recommend Yagamoth play Battletoads because, you know, it would appeal to him specifically, you know? So I try to take all that information into account and be as objective as possible when I think of other people, what kind of games they enjoy, all right? And obviously, we're rating these things in comparison to the era, which is SNES, and actually a little bit of PlayStation because it came out late at SNES, and the fact that it's an RPG genre, okay? So it's not being compared against Mega Man, except for maybe in visuals, you know what I mean? That I beat Battletoads. Very close, but not quite. We didn't get credits. But yeah, here's our personal choice game so far that we've rated. Dragon Warrior 2 and Persona 4 so far. Now we have Star Ocean. I think Yakuza Kiwami 2 is going to be our next review, so maybe even 4. Can anybody get me the release date for Star Ocean SNES? And there's only a Japanese release for it, so that's all I need for that. If someone wants to grab that for me. First is, I need to make it so this scrolls down. Well, I need the date, not just the year. How do I make it so this top row doesn't go down? How do I make it so it doesn't go down? Like, so it stays on the top? Like this one, see the row doesn't change? Freeze row. I don't see it. Is it up here somewhere? Probably in format. Conditional formatting? I don't know. Ah, what happened? It changed color. View, not format. View. Freeze. One row. One row? No. Do that. 2 rows? There we go. Did it. It looks a little off, but that's fine. I don't care. It does what it needs to do. Okay. Okay. Anyway, here we go. So Star Ocean, we beat it. We finished it. Let's mark this as green. Completion time was only like 21 hours, which was really fast, and we'll talk about that. And of course, I put the wrong color in. I always do that. So first is, what is the date again? July 19th. July 19, 1996. Okay. Visuals. This is by far the most impressive part of this game. This game has insanely good visuals for its time. It really looks like a low-res PlayStation game. You know what I mean? Because it looks like Tales of Destiny, but just like a lower resolution, you know, which is of course obvious because the Super Nintendo can't support a higher resolution, right? But yeah, like this is, this FF4 wasn't that long either. Blind FF4 will take you like 30, 40 hours. Granted, I can beat Final Fantasy 4 in like 15 hours now because I'm very experienced with it, but generally speaking, it's going to take you a lot more than 20 hours. But anyway, the visuals of this game were incredibly impressive. They had wonderful sprite work, a lot of really cool animations and visuals for spells and stuff. This is definitely a game that excels heavily in the visuals department. However, as you advance later on in the game, a lot of the dungeon design just goes to poop, and you just get like random platform dungeon, random hallway dungeon, without anything really going on except for a lot of maziness. That being said, it doesn't really like the actual tile set itself is still really good, and despite it being not really natural looking, it's kind of hard in this era to like create something that feels natural looking. But let's be honest, a lot of SNES games still did that just perfectly fine. But I think it doesn't really do too much to hurt the visual score of this game. And I'd love to give it a 9 on visuals, but I think it just doesn't quite hit that mark, so we're going to give it an 8. Okay. Audio. Gosh, this one's a pretty hard one because there's a lot of really cool things in this game for audio, and it's also one of the more impressive aspects of the game. But I think the problem with the audio is that they tried to be really impressive with the audio, and I think it ended up hurting the game in some places. And while it definitely shows a mastery of the SNES sound chip in a lot of ways, they would have been better off not having the random screaming of abilities, and the initial opening with the voice dialogue was really hard to hear what was going on. I couldn't understand it at all. And the OST, I mean, it's Sakuraba. It's Sakuraba through and through and through. And while I really appreciate what Sakuraba does, one of the problems that Sakuraba does is that it's just always, you know, it's just... Oops, this is 3. There's just nothing really truly unique about Sakuraba, you know? Like his style is definitely very like noticeable, but it's just like the same track over and over and over again. Demon Lord, thank you for the host, I appreciate that. You know, it just feels like there's nothing that stands out from his tracks. Like in the game, you're jamming, out of the game, you're jamming, but it's like, if you played a Sakuraba track, I wouldn't know what track it is. You know, if I play like, you know, the FF6 battle theme, you know that's the FF6 battle theme, man. You know it. Like that is, it stands out all by itself. Every single one of the tracks stands out by themselves, you know? Sakuraba's just like, and then the other track is, you know, it just seems the same. You can't really pick one out from the other. They're just all kind of the same track mashed together, and they jam, and it's great, and you're listening to it, it's awesome, but like, it doesn't have identity other than the style. The style itself has identity, but the tracks themselves don't. And it kind of just mashes together, and you don't really have like a favorite track, or you can't really go, oh yeah, that dungeon music was so cool, or oh yeah, the battle theme from this game. It's just all the same. It's just samey, you know? Star Ocean 2 and Valkyrie Profile. I mean, again, we did this earlier where I played Valkyrie Profile tracks and they sounded exactly like the track that I was listening to in the dungeon. It was almost impossible to tell the difference between them other than a few notes, you know? And it just, I want to say I like Sakuraba, but really he doesn't have the ability to create identity in his individual tracks. It's just the Sakuraba genre, and then they all just sound the same. It's kind of like rap music. Like every rap track is exactly the same, but you know that it's rap. But really, rap music is all just a beat in the background and then rapping, but it's all the same stuff. Listen, I've listened to plenty of rap music. I used to listen to it when I was a kid. It's very 100% true. It's all generated beat, rhythm, and that's about it. Country music's all the same, a little bit actually, but it has the same, like, what do you call it? Structure. But rap music almost always has the same structure, yeah. All the same as in it's garbage. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of rap music. It's pretty bad overall. But that's just me. Anyway, so while I want to give the audio an 8, I think I want to bring it back down to a 7 just because of the fact that even in this is the earliest stage of Sakuraba. This is like almost his first, game. I think Tales of Fantasia is probably the actual first one. And it just shows that he really hasn't grown or learned anything even from his beginnings in terms of like creating something more than just Sakuraba-isms, There's some good rap and a lot of garbage. Yeah, I agree. Just like every other music genre. But generally speaking, rap, you like, it's the same like flow almost every, like, and then there's some that stands out from that. Just like any other genre, but more so with rap than anything else. Anyway, yeah. The sound design is very good as well. The sound effects were good. They were rewarding. They felt good. It's very Star Ocean sound effects. It's the same as Star Ocean 2. Gameplay, I want to say, okay, so this is kind of a, no, First Departure is a remake, and Departure R is a remaster of the remake. Other way around, Chrono Kid. Other way around. So, gameplay, this is kind of a hard one to judge as well, because the thing about the gameplay in this game is that it really stood out from any other game at the time. And I think really, like, this shows the difference between the wisdom of Squaresoft at the time and the ambition of others. And Squaresoft knew that real-time or semi-real-time combat just wasn't the way, and the ATB system was the best way to handle it, and it's proof that they were right, because that system is fantastic, and this system just doesn't, it lacks the ability to have free movement and execute combos in a meaningful way, and there's just not a whole lot you can do. 99% of the game, I just pressed the A button. You know what I did to the last boss? I pressed the A button. That's it. That's all I did. I just pressed the A button a whole bunch. That's all I did. That's it. That's the gameplay. Press A. None of the special abilities were all that great. Navigating the menus in combat was a huge guesswork. I spent a lot of time before I figured out how to run away, how to use items, how to use techs or anything. I still never learned how to force a tech from an ally, if you even can. A lot of the menus were just X'd out for the main character. You couldn't set default to somebody else, and overall, most of the abilities for the main character, which should be the best, were all lacking, and it just felt like press A. And the game was incredibly short. I felt like, I don't know, there was a lot of mazy dungeons, which just kind of forced really ambiguous like solutions to, like the puzzles, the last 2 puzzles that we did, and the maze dungeon that we got stuck in for like 4 hours, 6 hours. We got stuck in that thing last Saturday, and it just kind of lacked overall in gameplay. It really was overly ambitious, and I think every other developer of the time knew that this just wasn't a thing. And I think what they did is they took what they learned from Tales of Fantasia, and they're like, well, we can't copy this game, so we need to do what we know, but in a different format. So they made the 2.5D instead of the 2D, and it just didn't translate very well. What they needed to do was offer, like, even in Tales of Fantasia, you press up and A and you get a different ability. They could have done that with this too, but they didn't. The D-pad did nothing in the game at all. You could have even used it to move around the field. But what it seems like is if, because they were so ambitious with the visuals and the audio, that not only did they lack the ability to create meaningful combat, but they also weren't capable of it because the memory was like full on, like, oh shit, I'm handling all this stuff. What is going on? I can't even bother with like directional inputs. That's madness, you know? That's what it kind of feels like. I don't know if that's the case. It just felt like it. And so while there's a lot of good parts to the combat and the gameplay, there's a lot of flaws as well. And because it's such a varying degree of good and bad, I can't really do anything with the gameplay other than just give it a 5, you know? I would like to actually give it a lower score just because of the end result. In fact, I actually am going to give it a 4. The end result of the gameplay was that it was flawed. It was slightly flawed overall, and that needs to be recorded in such a way. Because in the end, you pressed A to beat the final boss, guys. You pressed A. That's it. That's it. Heck, I thought how I beat almost every single boss in the game was pressing A. Yeah. One cool thing about it, though, was that even Star Ocean 1 has the whole different characters. By the way, am I right in saying that the cat girl was the one that wears the bikini and I could have gotten her instead of Angel Boy? I'm pretty sure that's true. You can get her with the Angel Boy, but who does she replace? Who does she replace? Because usually in Star Ocean, it's like you get one or the other. So is it? Oh, replaces Fear? Oh, I'm fine. I'm good. I'm glad I got Fear. I'm good. Fear was a hard carry in a lot of places. If I could have controlled Fear by default, it would have been no contest. Fear was I liked Fear despite her 5 head. Hey, Remishu, thank you for the 13 months resub. Thank you. Story. Oh God, where do I start with this? It never was a good story, even in the beginning. Like, even in the beginning, there was like huge loopholes, plot holes, or gosh, how do I explain this? I'm trying to remember all this stuff. The only thing that I really have to draw from is what happened today, but like even in the beginning of the story, like things just kind of happened. It just threw keywords at you without you actually like giving you a build up for it. And while I think the translation wasn't very good, I think it was at the very least accurate, just not localized. And nobody plays Star Ocean for the story. Let me tell you, Rojo. Let me tell you something. All right. Let me here. We're gonna pause the music because I think this is really important that you understand and acknowledge what I'm about to say here. Okay. Story is not the most important thing. Gameplay. Gameplay is the most important thing to any game, even if it's an RPG. But there's something special about RPGs that attracts people. And you know what that is? The possibility of an engaging story. That's why people play or started to play RPGs, because they want the story, they want to have a world built around them and to be given an awesome story to immerse themselves in with the characters and all that good stuff. RPGs are heavily story influenced video games. Whether you play Star Ocean for the gameplay or not, you should never say, oh, it's okay because I play Star Ocean for the gameplay anyway. Because it's a freaking RPG. Those need to have an interesting and compelling story, because that's why you buy them. Chances are, you know, like the gameplay is something that you want to play the game for, but you're also really wanting that story, and everything else is kind of whatever. Like music, visuals, those are all pretty good to have and everything, but gameplay, paramount. Story for an RPG is second by far. RPG is gameplay and then story and then music and then visuals, in that order. Because if you have bad visuals, you don't really care. If the story is compelling and the gameplay is fun, you're like, whatever. But if you have great visuals and the gameplay and story suck, you're just like, what is this? What is this? you know? Gameplay can tell a story. That's true. That's true. Dark Souls is a great example of gameplay telling the story, actually. The things that you do and the places that you go and the monsters that you fight are all huge parts of the gameplay or the storytelling. Arbel Knox, thank you for the Twitch Prime sub. I appreciate that. Don't go back in the VOD where I say Albel Knox is my least favorite character of all time. Now that you're subbed, I need you to stay subbed. So, you know, just go ahead and keep renewing that Twitch Prime and ignore the fact that Albel Knox is my least favorite character of all time. Hey, Solo, what's good, dude? I personally just don't want the story to suck if it's decent enough. Yes, that's exactly it. If the story is decent, that's fine. You know, like an okay story is acceptable, but this doesn't do okay story. This has lack of conveyance in story like development, lack of character development. Once you get a character in your party, they just don't say anything anymore unless they're part of the main story character. Edge has no personality whatsoever. He's just the most generic of all pro tags in it ever. He just has the dialogue that's needed to advance the story. And the real pro tag is Renoxus. He's the real pro tag. He's the one that actually has like the presence in the story. Edge is just, or not Edge, but like whatever his main character is supposed to be, the default name. Main character Kun. It's just there. Like there's no reason for Renoxus to enlist him ever again or even bother with him. He should just leave because he does nothing. And Millie, just none of the characters matter except for Renoxus and maybe Iria, and that's it. But like just the way the game completely lacks the ability of telling you important storyline elements, you just do things. They just happen. It's like we need to go defeat the Demon King because why now? Like all of a sudden we just hear that about the Demon King and how we need to beat him. That's it. We never see him. He never does anything. We never see that he has power, that he's hurting anybody or anything until we're supposed to beat him. And it's like, what? And the whole, he destroyed a town and then nothing happened after that. And we don't even know. We never saw the weapon he used to do it. We don't know his motivations or his intent or anything. Nothing. It's just like, what? And then they take the blood and then we kill him and then that's that, and then we get thrown into random post-game story, or not even post-game story, end-game story, where it's just like, yeah, we beat the Demon King and now these guys, ? And we beat him and that's the last boss? Like, what? What? There's not even a story here. So a 10 for the story, yeah. This is equivalent to Quest 64 story, by the way. Even for like Dragon Warrior 1 on the NES has a more interesting and compelling story than this game did. It was laughable. It was laughable in terms of story. And honestly, that made it fun, to be honest. That made it fun, to be honest. Craftsmanship. Now, this is also going to take a little bit of a hit here. I want to really give this game a lot of points for craftsmanship because the things that they did on the SNES were remarkable. Amazing audio, amazing visuals, really way up there. The problem is that their ambition to make the game visually appealing and all that stuff actually ended up hurting it, because when you get into battle and you get a lot of spell effects going on, you're starting to lose other things because of like pixel limits or like sprite limits. There's like what, 16 sprites that can be on screen at any given time, and you would lose some sprites because others would enter the field and it would just be a jumbled mess. And it's like, it's really cool that they were very ambitious with the visuals, but it ended up hurting it, you know? Dry erase boards are remarked. God dang it, Army. Oh, man. But so it's like, I want that to be celebrated about this game. It is definitely a quite a remarkable visually presented game, and the audio is also very, very remarkable what they were able to do, but it really kind of holds the game back because the hardware just isn't there for that kind of thing, you know? It's like trying to play World of Warcraft on a 486, you know? It just doesn't work. You might be able to boot it up and it's just gonna be like jumbled and low res and stuff, you know? You just can't do it. It just doesn't work, you know? Like, it just needed to be on the PlayStation. It really did. It needed to be on the PlayStation, and then it would have been able to be the same game. Don't change anything other than the resolution to fit the PlayStation resolution, and then you're good. Like that's all they needed to do, which is like it came out late enough that they could have done the PlayStation. Like, well, they didn't need to do SNES or Famicom or whatever. It was 96, you know? That's a year before FF7, right? So like there was just no need to be on the SNES. And not only that, but the way the story is constructed really hurts this score as well, because craftsmanship, part of craftsmanship is like properly pathing out your destination to the player to get from point A to point B in a good and solid way, without glitches, without bugs, without artifacting, without, you know, question mark of where to go and what to do. And even for an SNES game, there was a lot of like head scratching moments, like, wait, what do I do now? They just said, hey, we really like you and you're a good dude. And I'm just kind of left there going like, okay. Convenience. Oh, I did write that. Why did I do that? Was that autocorrect? Conveyance. That's spelled right? Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. So I really want to say, like, there's some great aspects to this game's delivery, but a lot of those great aspects actually hurt it. And then there's also the lack of properly making a game that makes sense. And then the puzzles were really, really bad as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it an average score, because there's some fantastic things and some other not super fantastic things. And I think there's a little bit of forgiveness because of SNES. I had fun with it. I had fun with the game. I definitely did not enjoy it. I had a really good time laughing at the story, but I mean, here's the thing about enjoyment. Enjoyment doesn't care about how good the story is. Enjoyment doesn't care how good the gameplay is. Enjoyment is like, if I can laugh at something for being bad, I'm having fun with it. You know, I'm enjoying it. Like Ephemeral Fantasia, man, what was my enjoyment with that game? Actually, maybe not Ephemeral Fantasia, but there's like there's definitely a game that was like really, really, really oh, I had a 1 on enjoyment. Never mind. There was a game that was like really not that great, but I just really enjoyed playing. Didn't matter how bad it was. Where was it? Final Fantasy Type 0 didn't get great on a lot of stuff, and I had a pretty good time with that one. Star Ocean, Integrity and Faithlessness, I had fun with that. I don't know. There's definitely some games out there where, look at that, here we go, RPG Maker. This is a great example. There's nothing really impressive about RPG Maker, but I had so much fun just messing around with stuff and laughing at things and having a good time, you know? Thousand Arms? Oh, there we go. Yeah, Thousand Arms. That's a great example of one that was not a very good game, but I had a lot of fun with it. Yeah, Thousand Arms, man. Visually very impressive. Everything else sucked. But I had fun because it was ridiculous and silly, and we laughed at stuff, and we just had a good time with it, you know? And so you don't necessarily need to have a flawless game to enjoy it. Heck, Nier Automata had 10 on story, but I only gave it like 7 or 8 on enjoyment, you know? I enjoyed Thousand Arms more than Nier Automata just because of the silliness that came from that game. And I wouldn't say I enjoyed this in the same capacity, but I definitely had a good time with it. And I'm probably going to give it about I probably enjoyed it about as much as Persona 4, actually, looking at it now. Like, yeah, I had fun. I had fun with it. Yeah, well, let's give it a 6 just because of the gameplay. Really didn't do it any favors. And there we go. There's our review for Star Ocean on the SNES. If you're on YouTube, why don't you comment about how much you agree or disagree with my scores here? And I'll debate you. I'll fight you IRL. That's going to do it for the review. And we're going to move on to a break. Let's get this screen out of here. We're going to move on to a break. And I'm going to be back in a few minutes. We're going to set up Dragon Warrior 3 on the NES. Dragon Warrior 3 on the NES. So hang tight, listen to some hot Persona jams. Be back in a few minutes with Dragon Warrior 3 on NES for the rest of the evening. We got about 4 hours left, so hang tight.